A player in love. Chapter 1, Calling off the marriage. Keira Whitlaw found it hard to breathe, as if something heavy had been pressed against her body. Sometime later, a man got to his feet and put on his clothes with an impassive expression. His neat collars, diamond cufflinks, and immaculate white shirt were in stark contrast with a particular area in the room. The man took a glance at her and realized that she had passed out. "Happy birthday, Keira Whitlaw." The man's thin lips curved into a disdainful smile, as if he had no regard for anything in this world. A sinister glint flashed across his dark eyes, which seemed able to devour everything. There was a sense of recklessness and impudicity on his perfect-looking face. He didn't even want to stay for one more second as he quickly put on his black jacket and opened the door. Then, he stepped out of the room and disappeared into the crowd. A while later, a loud thump was heard as the sound of the door being opened forcefully broke through the air, which was followed by a commotion. After the reporters streamed into the room and saw the sight before their eyes, they immediately knew that they had found the headline for the next day. Therefore, they hurriedly started taking pictures as their camera flashes illuminated the dark room. "It's so noisy," Keira scowled and opened her eyes, only to be dazzled by the flashing lights in front of her, so she subconsciously raised her left hand to block her face. However, before she could figure out what was going on, a deafening yell could be heard in the room. "Keira, how can you do this to me?" When Keira made out the face of the raging man, her mind turned completely blank. Jonathan, after she called out to him, she immediately realized that she had lost her virginity. Among all the chaos, she hurriedly pulled the quilt around her tighter and started crying in silence. Perhaps it was the flashes that irritated her eyes, or perhaps it was her heart that was wounded. The expression on Jonathan Lowry's handsome face was filled with coldness. His gentleness in the past seemed to have turned into ruthlessness now. Keira couldn't find any hint of tenderness on his face anymore. What was left was fury and stone-hardness. The atmosphere around him was so glacial that it was as though the air had frozen. When the camera flash once again shone on Keira's embarrassed face, she felt as if countless arrows had pierced through her heart. "What's going on?" Jonathan. Please believe me." Keira's pale lips were trembling slightly, but she didn't know how she could explain herself. "Are you trying to say you didn't cheat on me?" Jonathan snorted as his eyes turned even more glacial. Staring at her, he uttered in a steadfast manner, "A shameless woman like you isn't worth my love. Keira Whitlaw, I have to call off the marriage." He said he wants to call off the marriage. Keira was so shocked that her mind started buzzing. "No, Jonathan." Jonathan didn't look at her again as if she was the biggest eyesore in the world. Turning around in a fit of rage, he pushed the crowd away and stormed out of the room. Watching the heartless man leave, Keira felt like her heart was going to break apart. It had been 4 years since they got together, so she couldn't believe that her boyfriend, who had always treated her tenderly, would leave her just like this. The unfeeling reporters were still taking pictures of her in an incessant manner. Keira's eyes turned bloodshot as she stared at these people. All of a sudden, she grabbed the pillows around her and hurled them at these people. Then, her bellow that came from the top of her lungs broke through the air. "Stop taking pictures. *CK off. Stop it." The reporters were all stunned by her hideous expression. As they left the room, they still mocked her by saying, "Who would have thought that the young lady from the Whitlaw family is this kind of woman?" After they were gone, Keira covered herself in the quilt and leapt off the bed. Following that, she dashed toward the door and shut it with a loud slam. Leaning against the door, she crouched down as her entire body was trembling, which forced her to hug her own knees tightly. Despite that, she still couldn't stop herself from quivering. She didn't understand what actually happened. Earlier, she was having fun at her own birthday party. But how did she end up in such a state? After that, she lowered her head and took a glance at her own body. The pain she felt reminded her that she had lost one of the virtues she had saved up. Then, she tried to recall what happened. But everything she remembered was vague, as she couldn't even make out what the man looked like. Can someone tell me what has happened? She buried her head in her knees and started bawling. A moment later, she stopped crying as she regained her rationality. What's the point of crying over spilled milk? I can never be defeated just like this. No way. Just then, her phone in the bag started ringing. She sniffled and fished out her phone. Dad, what's wrong? Keira, come to my office now. Oh, what's wrong? Dad, has anything happened? Just when she wanted to ask more questions, her father hung up on her. Her heart sank, as her father wouldn't normally do this to her. What's going on? With no time to think about it, she quickly cleaned up herself and left the hotel. Welcome to download Flipread app to read more chapters of A Player in Love novel online.